Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to change your life, not tomorrow, not next year, but immediately, you must change your mindset. And I'm not talking about some vague positive thinking. I'm talking about something far more powerful. Responsibility is the catalyst for immediate change. When you decide to take responsibility for your life, your choices, your behavior, your outcomes, you flip a switch that most people never touch. It is a mental shift, and it happens in an instant. Not over weeks, not over years instantly. The moment you stop pointing fingers and start pointing thumbs, life begins to move in a different direction. Most people go through life blaming circumstances, parents, bosses, governments, bad luck, or even the weather. They treat life like a series of unfortunate events being done to them, rather than something being shaped by them. This mindset is a trap. It keeps people stuck, waiting for something to improve before they take action. But those who understand the power of personal responsibility don't wait for external permission. They wake up and say, "No one's coming to save me, it's on me." That single thought creates an internal revolution. Responsibility gives you leverage over your own life. The moment you stop outsourcing the cause of your problems, you start reclaiming the power to change them. That's why it works so fast. You don't need more degrees, more connections, or a perfect environment. You need ownership, and the second you take ownership, even your smallest actions become investments in your future rather than reactions to your past. Now, responsibility isn't always comfortable. In fact, it can feel heavy at first. It means admitting that some of your struggles were created by your own choices, or by your refusal to make better ones. But here's the upside. If you created part of the problem, then you also have the power to create the solution. That's a trade worth making. Responsibility is not a burden. It's a tool, a lever, a life changer, and it's available to everyone, no matter where you start. People often say they want transformation. They want new habits, new results, new success, but they skip the foundation. Without responsibility, all those other things are temporary. A person can get motivated, start strong, but the moment something doesn't go their way, they collapse into blame and excuses. Responsibility creates the stability to keep going, even when things get hard, because you've already accepted that your progress is up to you. It's easy to be responsible when things are going well. The test is how you respond when life gets messy, when someone lets you down, when the job falls through, when the timing is off. Do you look outward or inward? The people who thrive are the ones who ask, "What can I do about this?" Not because everything is their fault, but because they've learned that progress begins when finger pointing ends. This mindset doesn't just change your life, it changes it immediately, because the power is already inside you. You just have to claim it, not tomorrow, not someday. The very moment you choose responsibility, your life begins to shift. And that shift, however small it may seem, changes everything. Waiting is the enemy of progress. It disguises itself as patience, as preparation, as strategy. But in truth, most waiting is fear in disguise. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of stepping into the unknown. People wait for the perfect time, the perfect mood, the perfect plan, but perfection never arrives. And while they wait, life moves on without them. Momentum dies. Opportunities vanish. Confidence withers. Waiting quietly robs you of the one thing you can never get back: time. Progress requires action. Not perfect action, any action. The path forward is rarely clear until you start moving. It's in motion that clarity begins to form. But the moment you choose to wait, you step out of that creative flow. You delay the lessons, the feedback, the real-life experiences that growth demands. You don't build a skill by thinking about it. You build it by doing, by stumbling, by adjusting. Waiting keeps you in your head, and nothing grows in theory. Only in practice. People often convince themselves that they're waiting because they're being smart, cautious, responsible. But the truth is, most people wait because waiting feels safer than risking disappointment. It gives you the illusion of control. You can't fail if you never start. You can't be rejected if you never ask. You can't fall if you never leap. But that safety is an illusion, because while you're sitting still, the world keeps turning. Other people are trying, learning, improving, and before long, your inaction becomes the very thing that holds you back, not because you didn't have potential, but because you never activated it. The world does not reward those who wait. It rewards those who step forward, even when they don't feel ready. It rewards those who take risks, make decisions, and learn along the way. You can't steer a parked car, and you can't grow standing still. Yes, you'll make mistakes. Yes, you'll have moments of doubt. But mistakes are part of movement, and movement is the only path to mastery. You cannot progress in pause. You progress in motion. Every dream, every goal, every transformation requires a starting point, and that point is always now. Waiting for certainty is a fool's game. It will never feel completely right. You will never have all the answers, but you don't need to. You just need to take the next step, however small, and trust that action will lead to insight, and insight will lead to momentum. It's not about giant leaps. It's about refusing to be still when your heart knows it's time to move. Waiting feels safe, but it's the most dangerous thing of all. Because while you hesitate, you lose time, you lose energy, you lose belief. Action creates energy. Action builds belief. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes to act. And the harder it becomes to act, the more likely you are to stay stuck. So if you want progress, real, meaningful progress, don't wait. Move even if it's messy, even if it's uncertain, especially if it's uncomfortable, because that first step is everything. Ownership leads to empowerment. The moment you take full ownership of your life, your choices, your habits, your results, you unlock a level of personal power that most people never experience. Ownership is not about blame or guilt. It's about control. When you say, "This is my life and I am responsible for it," you stop being a victim of circumstance and start becoming the architect of your future. It's not what happens to you that defines your potential. It's how you respond, and that response begins with ownership. Too often, people hand away their power without even realizing it. They blame the economy, their upbringing, their relationships, their boss, or their past mistakes. But every time you place responsibility outside of yourself, you give away the power to change. You say, "I can't move forward until something else changes." That's a trap. Empowerment comes when you bring the responsibility back to where it belongs, within you. When you own the problem, you also own the possibility of the solution. Taking ownership means looking at your life with honesty and courage. It means asking the hard questions. What role did I play in this? Or what can I do differently next time? It's not always easy, but it is freeing. Because once you accept that you are the common denominator in your life, you also realize that you are the constant source of change. That's the power most people never tap into. They wait for external rescue, while the internal solution is right there, waiting for them to claim it. When you fully embrace ownership, excuses become irrelevant. You stop focusing on what you can't control and start pouring energy into what you can. You stop saying, "It's not fair," and start asking, "What can I build from this?" That shift in mindset transforms how you face problems. Instead of feeling helpless, you feel resourceful. Instead of complaining, you create. You stop reacting to life and start designing it. This level of empowerment doesn't require perfection. It just requires responsibility. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be willing to lead your own life. That means showing up when it's hard, taking action even when you're uncertain, and holding yourself to a higher standard. Not because anyone's forcing you to, but because you've chosen to. That's what ownership does. It raises your standards, sharpens your vision, and fuels your discipline. The beauty of ownership is that it doesn't depend on anyone else. It doesn't wait for permission or rely on approval. It's yours the moment you claim it. And when you do, you stop being driven by external forces and start becoming internally led. That's where confidence is born. That's where resilience is built. That's where progress becomes sustainable, because it's coming from the strongest foundation there is. Your own decision to take control of your life and lead it forward, step by step, without excuses. You are the architect of your outcomes. Every result you experience in life, whether in your health, your finances, your relationships, or your personal growth, can be traced back to choices you've made, habits you've built, and beliefs you've accepted. This isn't about blame. It's about design. Life doesn't just happen to you. It takes shape through your thoughts, your actions, and your daily disciplines. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can begin reshaping any part of your life that isn't working the way you want it to. Most people live reactively. They respond to situations, adapt to circumstances, and then wonder why they feel powerless or stuck. But the truth is, every day you are laying bricks in the foundation of your future. The conversations you have, the books you read or ignore, the food you eat, the way you spend your money and time, all of it contributes to the blueprint of your life. When you realize that your outcomes aren't accidents, but the natural result of accumulated decisions, you can start building with intention instead of drifting by default. Being the architect of your outcomes means recognizing that you don't need to wait for external validation or permission to create change. You already have the tools, your mindset, your energy, your willpower, and your ability to learn and adapt. Whether you're building success, healing from failure, or aiming for reinvention, it all starts with vision and action. Architects begin with a clear picture of what they want to create, and then they work backward, step by step, until the design becomes reality. Your life works the same way. Of course, some things are outside your control. That's a fact. But what you do with what you're given is always within your reach. And often, the people who create the most impressive results aren't the ones with the best circumstances. They are the ones with the clearest vision and the strongest commitment to that vision. They refuse to be passive participants in their own lives. They don't say, "Let's see what happens." They say, "Let's make something happen." That's the difference between someone who drifts and someone who builds. When you stop outsourcing your outcomes to luck, other people, or external forces, you take back your agency. You move from being a tenant in your life to being the builder of it. You stop living by chance and start living by choice. You start asking better questions. What do I want to create? What habits support that vision? What do I need to let go of? And as you begin to act on those answers, your life starts to shift. First gradually, then significantly. Every structure begins with a decision, a plan, and the discipline to follow through. Your life is no different. You are building it, whether you realize it or not. The only question is whether you're building what you truly want, or settling for what's convenient. When you own the role of architect, you no longer accept outcomes, you design them. That mindset is where transformation begins. Excuses are the currency of the average. They're the language of limitation, the shield for inaction, and the most common reason people settle for far less than they're capable of achieving. Everyone has challenges, everyone faces setbacks, but not everyone chooses to let those things define them. The average person leans on excuses to justify where they are, while the exceptional person looks for ways to rise above. The difference is not in talent, resources, or luck, it's in mindset. The moment you trade your excuses for responsibility, you separate yourself from the crowd. Excuses feel safe. They protect the ego. They allow someone to say, "It's not my fault," or "I would have succeeded if it weren't for this or that." But no excuse has ever moved a life forward. No excuse has ever built a business, strengthened a relationship, or improved someone's health. Excuses may feel comfortable in the moment, but they always come at a cost: missed opportunities, stagnant growth, and unrealized potential. The average person never adds these costs up, and that's exactly why they stay average. There's an excuse for every failure: not enough time, too tired, didn't get the support, born into the wrong circumstances, bad economy, lack of motivation. The problem isn't that these reasons aren't real. They often are. The problem is when you treat them as final. The top performers in any area of life face the same realities, but instead of using them as roadblocks, they turn them into fuel. They find a way to act anyway. They don't have fewer problems, they have fewer excuses. Every time you make an excuse, you strengthen the habit of quitting on yourself. You build the muscle of retreat, and the more you do it, the more you believe it. It becomes your identity, someone who almost gets there, someone who always has a story about why it didn't work out. That mindset will trap you in mediocrity. It convinces you that your limits are permanent, when in reality, they're just the result of choices you're refusing to challenge. On the other hand, when you strip away excuses and face yourself honestly, you gain something far more powerful: clarity and control. You start to see what's actually possible when effort replaces complaint. You start to believe in progress instead of perfection. You understand that it's not about waiting for perfect conditions. It's about doing what you can with what you have where you are. That's how momentum is built. That's how people rise, one decision at a time, made without excuse and carried out with commitment. Excuses keep you average because they make average acceptable. They convince you that playing small is reasonable. But deep down, you know the truth. You know there's more in you, and you also know that every excuse you make pulls you further from it. If you want to rise above the crowd, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to stop buying the stories that hold you down. When you do, you begin to write new ones, ones where you show up, step up, and grow beyond what you thought possible. A responsible mindset creates resilience. When you take ownership of your thoughts, actions, and outcomes, you build an internal foundation that doesn't shake every time life throws something difficult your way. Responsibility isn't just about admitting when you're wrong or holding yourself accountable. When things go off track, it's about deciding that no matter what happens, you will find a way to respond with strength, not weakness. That mindset becomes your anchor in the storm, your compass when the path isn't clear, and your engine when motivation fades. Resilience doesn't come from avoiding challenges. It's born from facing them with the mindset that you are capable of navigating through them. Life is unpredictable. Plans will fall apart, people will disappoint you, results will come slower than expected, and sometimes things will just hurt. If you haven't trained yourself to respond instead of react, you'll crumble. But when you've built a habit of taking responsibility, you automatically look inward before blaming outward. You ask, "What now?" instead of "Why me?" That shift changes everything. When you carry a responsible mindset, you no longer feel powerless. Even in the hardest moments, you remind yourself that your power lies in your response. You can choose your attitude. You can choose your next move. You can choose whether this moment breaks you or builds you. And it's that consistent ability to choose, especially when things are hard, that becomes the root of resilience. Most people wait for life to get easier, but life doesn't get easier. You get stronger. And responsibility is what trains that strength. It's easy to stay committed when everything is going well, But what about when the results don't show up, when people criticize you, or when the weight feels too heavy? That's when the average person starts pointing fingers, making excuses, or checking out altogether. But someone with a responsible mindset digs deeper. They ask better questions. They focus on what can still be done. They may pause, but they don't quit. And because of that, they keep moving when others stop. And that's what resilience looks like in action. Responsibility also breeds consistency, and consistency is one of the greatest protectors of mental toughness. When you know you can trust yourself to follow through even when it's not convenient, you don't need perfect conditions to move forward. You don't need constant motivation or applause. You move because you've made a decision to take ownership of your future. That consistency strengthens your identity. And identity is what people fall back on when willpower runs out. There's nothing soft about a responsible mindset. It's not about guilt or shame. It's about empowerment. It trains you to stop expecting life to be fair and start building the capacity to deal with it anyway. Over time, you become someone who doesn't run from difficulty. You walk into it, knowing you have the tools to adapt, overcome, and grow. That's what makes you resilient, not because life gets easier, but because you become stronger. And that strength starts the moment you stop blaming and start owning.